Welcome to all our viewers here in the United States and around the world. I'm Linda Kincaid live in Atlanta. We are following breaking news in the Middle East 1 week after the United States and Israel launched sweeping strikes on Iran.
All right, I've lost sound with you, Linda, but I'm sure we'll get it back up. I'm Eleni Giokos live.
We are having some connection issues with Eleni right now. Iran's president now says his country will never surrender as its military trades new strikes with Israel. It comes after U.S. President Donald Trump demanded Iran's unconditional surrender. In a televised address on state TV, Masoud Pezeshkian said, quote, "They will take their dreams about unconditional surrender to the grave." He also apologized to Arab Gulf nations. He says Iran will stop striking its neighbors unless attacks originate from those countries. But it's not clear when that will happen. Iranian state media reports that a combined missile and drone attack was launched towards Qatar and Bahrain today. Israel says another wave of strikes against Iran is underway after a night of heavy bombardment in Tehran and surrounding areas. The Israeli military says it used more than 80 fighter jets to carry out that attack. Video shows Tehran's Mehrabad airport on fire, although it's not clear if the airport was struck directly. U.S. Central Command says American forces have now hit more than 3,000 targets inside Iran. That includes ballistic missile sites and command posts of Iran's Revolutionary Guards. Well, meanwhile, Saudi Arabia says it's taken down more than a dozen drones heading towards one of the largest oil fields in the Middle East. Shebar Field's operator says it produces 1 million barrels of crude per day. Saudi Arabia's defense ministry did not say where the drones came from. Reporters covering all angles of this story. Paul Hancock joins us from Dubai. But first I want to go to Chief Oren Lieberman is there in Tel Aviv. Oren, good to have you with us. So Israel has launched a barrage of new missiles directed towards Iran. Iran is retaliating. Just take us through the latest.
Well, the Israeli military announced just a short time ago that they are in the process of striking targets not only in the Iranian capital of Tehran, but also in the city of Isfahan. Isfahan, not the first time the Israeli military has said they have struck that city over the course of the past week of war, but it is noteworthy because it is the city with an Iranian nuclear facility that was a target of both the U.S. and Israel back in June. Now, whether they're still targeting that nuclear facility or are going after other Iranian regime targets, that we'll wait to see as the day goes on. But you get a very clear picture here of how broad the set of targets is as the U.S. and Israel continue to target basically everything belonging to the Iranian regime, and it's starting to look like it's happening across the entire country from the list of places we have seen targets struck. U.S. Central Command says so far already they've hit more than 3,000 targets. Israel said yesterday already they've hit more than 2,500 targets using 6,000 munitions, so missiles and bombs. And there's no clear off-ramp here. Nobody is showing, and certainly not the U.S. and Israel, any interest in a de-escalation here as they simply work their way down the target list. That includes the regime itself and its different arms, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the intelligence headquarters, ballistic missile arrays, ballistic missile launchers, and much more. Speaking of Iranian ballistic missiles, we still see incoming at least 3 times overnight from where we're standing in Tel Aviv. There were the alerts warning of incoming missiles and then the sirens that told us to get in shelters and stay there for a few minutes until the threat has passed. What's interesting here is that over the past few days, we have seen most of those sirens happen in the day and the night was relatively quiet. Now that script has been flipped, at least over the course of the past several hours, with rounds of incoming happening overnight. So we'll see how and where this develops, but Iran has shown, even as both the U.S. and Israel have tried to go after their ballistic missile arrays, that they still have at least some capacity to carry out launches towards Israel. Meanwhile, I'll take you to Israel's northern border for a minute. There, Israel is striking what it says are Hezbollah targets across Lebanon. That after, over the course of the past 48 hours, it has issued broad evacuation warnings for all of southern Lebanon, parts of the capital, the Bekaa Valley as well. My colleague Jeremy Diamond was on that border and saw the exchange of fire happening very close to the border itself. Outgoing artillery fire from Israel targeted within about a kilometer of the border, so very, very close there, and incoming what appeared to be perhaps anti-tank missiles or drones fired from Hezbollah. So that border in and of itself is incredibly active, and of course, from the pictures we see out of Iran, the statements from the U.S. and Israel, we see that front is incredibly active and kinetic as well, Linda.
Oren Lieberman for us in Tel Aviv. Great to have you there. I want to throw back to our Eleni Giokos, who is in Abu Dhabi for the latest in the region. Eleni?
All right, thank you so much, Linda. I want to go to Dubai. We've got Paula Hancock's there for us, and really important what we've experienced not only in Abu Dhabi here where I am, but also in Dubai. We had alerts this morning, we saw interceptions, and of course in Dubai, Paula, an incident at the airport. Now things have resumed back to normal. That is what we're hearing from Dubai International, from Emirates as well. Take us through where we stand at this point.
Yes, Eleni, there were a number of interceptions, it sounded like, as you say, an impact on Dubai International Airport as well. I'll get to that in just a second. One interesting point I want to bring our viewers up to date with is as part of that apparently pre-recorded statement from Pezeshkian, the Iranian president, he also apologized to the Gulf nations. He says, I personally apologize. A remarkable statement from a leader saying, we do not intend to attack neighbouring countries. Now, he also said that the three-member Leadership Council had ruled that they would not attack neighbouring countries unless there were attacks originating from those countries against them. Now, of course, this came at around the same time as we were hearing alerts here in the UAE. We know that at Dubai International Airport there was an incident. It's unclear whether it was a drone that got through or whether it was debris from an intercepted projectile. We did see, though, that operations at that airport were suspended for high security reasons. They have resumed now. We did talk to one passenger who was a CNN colleague of mine. Let's listen to what he said.
Well, shortly after 9 o'clock, we were at the Terminal 3 at International Airport, and a lot of smoke could be seen from the glass. It seemed to be within the airport perimeter, but obviously in these situations it's quite difficult to tell. There were vibrations, reverberations. What was extraordinary is that the way the Dubai authorities within the airport reacted. There was professionalism, there was calm, there was no panic. The passengers showed no panic either that I could see.
So operations resumed at that airport as far as we know. They are trying to get as many planes out as possible. Planes coming back to Dubai as well. So the statement from the Iranian president was interesting, saying that they were no longer targets Gulf nations. It will be interesting to see what happens over the coming hours and the next couple of days to see whether or not that statement filters down to those in the armed forces, to those who are firing these missiles and drones. There have been thousands that have been fired towards Gulf nations over the past 7 days. Here in the UAE, we've had well over 1,000 drones that have been fired. The majority, the vast majority, over 90%, having been intercepted by air defense systems. We had been hearing from Iranian officials that the armed forces in some cases had been decentralized. So even if the leadership was taken out, that they would be able to continue with their operations, with their retaliation. So certainly the hours and days to come will be very interesting to see in the Gulf nations if this incoming fire does stop, and if it doesn't, it raises the question of how much control the Iranian president has over those armed forces. Eleni.
Yeah, exactly. It's a really important point. Masoud Pezeshkian also saying that we do not intend to attack our neighboring countries, saying that they are our brothers. And of course, we heard those alerts here. We heard, from Bijan Hosseini, our reporter in Doha, also alerts there shortly after that statement. When it comes into effect, and as you say, importantly, when it trickles down to military, remains to be seen. Paula Hancock's in Dubai for us. Thank you so much. CNN is the first U.S. network to start reporting from Iran since the conflict began. Our correspondent Fred Plykin and producer Claudia Otto were in Tehran during the latest strikes. We note that CNN operates in Iran only with government permission. Here's Fred for us.
Time and again, we've heard major airstrikes. In fact, earlier today, we were at a hospital that was hit, that was damaged when there was an airstrike in the vicinity. And while we were on the ground filming there, we heard more airstrikes not too far away from us. So it is a pretty constant thing here on the ground in Tehran. Also major strikes, of course, overnight happening last night as well. And you can feel that the city here is a lot emptier, obviously, than it would normally be. A lot of people have decided to leave the city simply because it appears to be so dangerous. Of course, while a lot of targets have been struck here, a lot of civilians have also been wounded. Some civilians have been killed on the ground here as well. The authorities today telling us, I was speaking to the head of the Iranian Red Crescent, saying that many people have been wounded and have been killed as the strikes have been going on. So this is really something for a lot of folks here on the ground, obviously very concerned about the situation, and you can really hear the thuds of those incoming strikes almost constantly.
Well, joining me now from Saudi Arabia, we've got Middle East correspondent for The Economist, Greg Kolstrom. He's also the author of How Long Will Israel Survive? The Threat from Within. Greg, really good to see you. We've heard just this morning news that Saudi Arabia was able to intercept potential targets on another Aramco refinery. We've seen critical energy infrastructure that has been hit across the region. Bring me up to speed in terms of the risk and the threat that still remains, despite Masoud Pezeshkian saying they do not intend to strike their neighbors anymore.
Right. We've seen energy infrastructure increasingly become a target over the past week. This is, I think, the third or fourth time that oil facilities in Saudi Arabia have been targeted. We've seen it in Qatar and other countries in the region. Iran has shifted over this week from using largely ballistic missiles on the first day of this war to using increasingly these small Shahed drones, which are not sophisticated weapons. They don't carry large payloads. You know, if they hit an airport or a hotel or a residential building, the damage from that is relatively limited. But if they hit energy infrastructure, oil and gas installations, obviously a lot of flammable stuff in these sites, the damage from that can be quite severe. So authorities in the region taking that threat quite seriously because of the impact to their economies and the impact that that would have on the global economy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've seen the oil price shoot up over yesterday's session. And that's after the Qatari energy minister came out and warned that we could see more pullback on production from the region. We've seen that LNG facility in Qatar that completely called force majeure, even on downstream products and so forth. What is the sense where you are in Saudi Arabia, being such a significant producer of refined product, of crude, in terms of the thinking right now as hostilities are still pretty much reality?
So the Saudis have already begun piping oil across the country. They have what's known as the East-West pipeline, which connects the oil fields, which are in the eastern part of Saudi Arabia, to a port on the Red Sea. And so they're able to export probably between 5 and 7 million barrels per day using this pipeline, moving the oil to the other side of the country. That's not their entire output. They can produce 10 to 11 million barrels a day. So there's going to be a hit, but at least the majority of Saudi oil output can still, for now, get to market. But I think the concerns are twofold. First, this ongoing threat from drones. We saw a few days ago a drone attack on Ras Tanura, which is a major oil refinery on the eastern coast. Didn't cause much damage. It was shot down, but the debris that fell caused a small fire. And so that refinery was shut down. So there's this risk that even if things aren't being directly hit, just the threat of drone attacks is going to make some companies in the region suspend operations out of fear for the safety of their personnel, the safety of their infrastructure. That's one worry. And then the second is just how long is going to go on with this de facto closure of the Strait of Hormuz. One thing that we learned from the crisis in the Red Sea with the Houthis over the past couple of years is that you don't have to regularly attack ships to scare them away. If Iran is able to just occasionally, once every few weeks, fire a drone at or seize a tanker in the Persian Gulf or the Strait of Hormuz, that is going to scare away, to cause insurers to revoke coverage or raise costs. And so it's not hard to maintain a de facto closure of a waterway. You don't have to do much in terms to enforce that, and it's very hard for the United States and its allies to stop the Iranians from doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Saudi Arabia has that east-west pipeline. We've also heard Iraq that is shutting down some of its production as well because, they don't have storage capacity. President Trump was also talking about insurance guarantees as well as naval escorts in a way that even Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, was playing down the disclosure, saying, they can circumvent all of this. Wartime insurance rates are telling us a completely different story. You mentioned how long this will last, that 4-week period that President Trump is kind of banking on right now. What is the sense of the way that Iran can continue to strike? Because a lot hinges on that.
I think there's a political question and there's a military question there. On the military side of it, their missile capability has been degraded quite severely over the past week. There's a bottleneck around the number of launchers that they have that are able to fire ballistic missiles. Many of those have now been destroyed. But keeping up drone attacks is something that I think they can do for a prolonged period of time. They have tens of thousands of Shahid drones. They're very cheap to produce. They cost something like $35,000 to $50,000 each to manufacture. They don't require sophisticated components. So the Iranians can keep churning those out and keep using them to attack shipping and other targets in the Gulf. And then on the political side of it, I mean, we heard the statement from President Pezeshkian just now. I'm very skeptical of it, I think, for two reasons. One is that it's unclear how much power he actually has right now in the Iranian system. He's nominally in charge, or part of a three-man council that's in charge. But everything I've heard is that he's something of a figurehead, as he was throughout his presidency. Real power rests with people like Ali Larijani or Mohammad Ghalibaf, the Speaker of Parliament. They're the ones calling the shots right now, not the president. And then these attacks are also part of a strategy for Iran. This is something that they have been preparing for years now, that if they were attacked in this fashion, they would retaliate against Iran's neighbors in the Gulf to try and raise the costs for America's allies and for the entire world. So he says we're going to stop doing this, but this is a plan. This is a strategy that Iran has been preparing for a long time, and it's hard to imagine that they're going to wind it down while the war is still going.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I mean, frankly, I think for many of us living in this region, it caught so many of us by surprise. It is unprecedented what we've seen here in Abu Dhabi, what we've seen in Dubai and various parts of the Gulf as well. I want to talk about the overall impact because, frankly, when we look at airspace that has been impacted, we're starting to see a lot of flights coming through at the moment. They're starting to get things back to normal. But I wonder what the longer term, not only economic impact, but perception of risk impact is going to be, not only where you are in Saudi Arabia, but here in the UAE.
And it's an open question at this point, and I think to some extent it depends on how long this war continues. I think so far the Gulf states have demonstrated a lot of resilience, more than people might have expected going into this conflict. We've seen that in everything from how air defenses have performed to the fact that basic services are still operating. Life, it's hardly normal, but life is continuing in the Gulf countries despite this really unprecedented situation. If it goes on for another week or two and then it ends, I tend to think things will bounce back to normal pretty quickly across the Gulf, and there won't be that lasting reputational damage. But if this becomes a more prolonged, drawn-out conflict, certainly if Iran continues to escalate its targeting, say, beyond energy infrastructure and starts aiming at power plants or water facilities, things that are critical for in the Gulf. If that happens, that worst case doomsday scenario, then I do think both the consequences of this are likely to be more severe and to be longer lasting.
All right, Greg, really good to have you on. Thank you so much for your insights today. Greg Kolstrom in Riyadh for us. Well, Iran is reportedly getting intelligence from abroad that can be used to target U.S. troops still ahead. Who's providing Tehran with information that could potentially cost American lives? We'll bring you an update on that story right after this. Stick with CNN.
What if you used aeronautical engineering and recycled materials to tackle the global challenge of waste from fast fashion? You get Pity Please.
So this garment is meant to grow as the child grows. How is that even possible?
So we've embedded an auxetic textile in the garment, which allows it to grow in its width and length. So when I gifted my nephew some garments, I was so excited to send it over to Denmark. By the time it arrived, it didn't even fit.
So I used my background in aerospace engineering, where I'd specialized in deployable structures for nanosatellites, and then applied those origami principles to textiles that would actually grow. It boils down to one super simple metric, which is every year in the UK, about 200 million items of children's wear go to waste every single year. Even if it's just one garment replacing 7 and still other garments are bought around that. But at least that this can actually reduce that consumption substantially.
On Laura Coates Live, we cover it all, from legal battles.
At least one juror has now been excused.
Political showdowns.
How much you think that weighs on the president?
And the conversations in between.
Wayne from Washington. Wayne, what's your question? Will you take this all the way to the Supreme Court?
I'm not refuting a syllable of what you said.
What do you say to people who are looking to find their voice?
All the news, all on Laura Coates Live, Tuesday through Saturday on CNN.
It is a busy news day all around the world.
This is One World.
The world's top headlines with some of the world's biggest players.
Stories that captivate from two unique perspectives. Zain Asher and Bianna Golodriga use their extensive experience to cover global news with passion and intellect.
Walk us through what specifically Secretary of State Marco Rubio was talking about. What leverage, if any, does Prime Minister Netanyahu have at this point?
One World with Zain Asher and Bianna Golodriga. Weekdays on CNN.
Powerful nations have discussed what to do about Russia, what to do about the war in Ukraine.
None of these guys have frontline experience. Why fight for Ukraine?
If Ukraine loses this war, Belarus will have zero chance to get free.
Rescue operations have been ongoing for hours. We're being moved again. We're at the train station right up near the border. Many of the refugees that are coming from some of the hardest hit areas.
Homes here were shattered in an instant.
This is a humanitarian crisis that they have to address.
This is one of the main streets here in the camp, and it's been turned to mud.
There's a backlash against BLM in the UK.
We're seeing protesters throw rocks, sticks over this border fence. They've seen Israeli troops on the other side, and we've heard what appears to be the sound of gunfire. How do you still come out to work?
I'm not going to stop my activities because they are threatening me.
Welcome back. I'm Linda Kincaid. Iran's president says his country will never surrender, despite a demand from Washington to do exactly that. On Friday, President Trump said he would accept nothing but unconditional surrender to end the war. In response, the Iranian leader said that's a dream that the U.S. can, quote, take to the grave. In a separate statement to CNN, Mr. Trump also said Iran doesn't have to become a democracy. He said he's not opposed to a new religious leader as long as he treats the US and its allies their freedom. Russia is not playing a neutral observer in war in Iran, according to multiple sources who spoke with CNN. US intelligence shows that Moscow is with intelligence about the location and movement of US ships, planes and troops. After the report came out Friday, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt told Fox News that it doesn't matter. CNN's Kristen Holmes later pressed her to explain that statement.
You just said that on Fox. It doesn't really matter if Russia is giving Iran information about assets. Why doesn't it matter if U.S. military is being put in danger by Russia? And is that what
I meant,
as
Kristen,
well?
and thank you for giving me a chance to make it very clear, is that it clearly is not making a difference with respect to the military operations in Iran, because we are completely decimating them.
Well, let's bring in CNN's Gabe Cohen, who joins us live from Washington. Good to have you with us, Gabe. So the U.S. says the war in the Middle East is expanding, with intelligence suggesting Russia is helping Iran target U.S. forces. Russia is denying that. What are officials saying about Russia's role, and is there evidence to back it up?
Well, so Linda, these are sources familiar with U.S. intelligence reporting that are telling CNN that Russia has been providing this intel about the location of American troops and assets to Iran so that Iran can target them. Much of that intelligence coming from Russia's really sophisticated satellite system, something Iran does not have, as they have seen their own military capabilities degraded day after day from all of the fighting. What's not clear at this point is whether or not that intel has actually been used for any specific strikes. But look, these are two countries that for years now, Russia and Iran, they have cooperated on various military technology, weapon development. But what's particularly significant here is it's the first real indication that Moscow is getting involved in this war. Now, we don't know if Russia's involvement could expand here, especially after this phone call that we learned about Friday between Iran's president and Vladimir Putin. As you mentioned, the White House, for their part, they are really downplaying this story. They do not want to talk about Russia. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, he told CBS News that, of course, the president is well aware of who is talking to who and that there is no immediate threat from Russia. Hegseth told reporters that right now Russia and China are, quote, not really a factor in this war. We also, as you played that clip, heard Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt say that if Russia is sharing intel, it's clearly not making much of a difference given the success of the U.S. operation thus far. And President Trump himself snapped at a reporter from Fox News on Friday who asked about the story during an event at the White House about how to change college sports. Here's what the president said.
It sounds like the Russians are helping Iran target and attack Americans now.
That's an easy problem compared to what we're doing here. I mean, but can I be honest? It's just, I have a lot of respect for you. You've always been very nice to me. What a stupid question that is to be asking at this time. We're talking about something else.
So we're not hearing the administration denounce Russia. They have really been laser focused on talking about the successes, the gains of the U.S. military in recent days. Trump also telling CNN that a week ago Iran was powerful. Now they have been indeed neutered. But remember, look, the president, the administration, they've talked about this hopeful timeline of 4 to 5 weeks for this war effort. They've said it could take much longer. We'll wait to see if that timeline could be drawn out more if other countries like Russia are drawn into the conflict.
Yeah, exactly. Gabe Cohen in Washington. Good to have you with us. Thanks so much. We'll talk next hour. And we will have more on Russia's reported intelligence sharing with Iran when we come back. We're going to talk to an expert about the implications of that relationship.
Climate change has always been an issue. By 2050, we want to be carbon neutral 100%. We have sub-nanoceramic membrane which can reduce CO2. Then you utilize to make hydrogen or renewable energy. Our unique ceramic technology plays an important role in realizing a sustainable society.
If you can keep your head when markets all around you are losing and you can't see a way through, if you can trust your instincts on when to buy, sell, or wait, and don't be tired by the waiting, if you can trade and not make money your master, meeting triumph and disaster in equal measure, if you can run with the bulls and not be afraid of the bears, treating both impostors the same. For when we come together, we will make sense of it all. And then the business world will be yours and all that is in it. And what is more, my friend, you will be profitable. For you are indeed watching Quest Means Business.
Caitlin Collins is your DC source, bringing you unprecedented access to the White House,
What would you say to the survivors?
Capitol Hill,
What does re-examining that look like? Are you saying that that's not going to happen? What exactly are your day-to-day responsibilities?
and beyond.
And good evening from Davos, Switzerland, where President Trump just capped off a whirlwind trip. You were obviously named by President Trump.
For in-depth political coverage and analysis, watch The Source, weekdays on CNN.
Business is all about making connections. But some connections are easier to make than others. With a CNN partner hotel, the world is always at your fingertips. CNN partner hotels, connected to your world.
I'm Manu Raju on Capitol Hill, and this is CNN.
Welcome back. I'm Eleni Jarkas, live in Abu Dhabi. Now, Iran is reportedly receiving help from Russia in the ongoing war with the United States. Multiple sources tell CNN that U.S. intelligence shows Moscow is giving Tehran information about the position and the movements of U.S. ships, planes, and troops. Much of that information is reportedly coming from Russian satellites, but it's still unclear if it was used in any specific Iranian attack on U.S. forces. For more, we're joined now by Nicole Grajewski, a fellow with the Nuclear Policy Program at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, and she's in Paris for us. Nicole, good to see you. There's so much happening. I want to talk about the intelligence sharing and Russia potentially talking directly to the Iranians about U.S. assets. What do you make of this information that Russia is now having a hand in this war?
Well, it's not entirely surprising that the Russians are providing intelligence for the Iranians. They have a quite extensive cooperation in that realm existing, especially when it comes to space-based assets. The majority of Iranian satellites are Russian-made, and there's some indications that there was an agreement prior to the war, which was actually stipulated in their strategic partnership agreement. So this seems to be more of a culmination of the Russia-Iran relationship than something, completely out of the blue.
I also want to talk about what we heard from Masoud Pezeshkian a short time ago today in a televised address in Iran, saying they are not going to surrender, but also importantly saying that they have no intention of continuing strikes on their neighbors, and actually went as far as apologizing, which is quite interesting because we've even had alerts since that announcement. The question is how centralized the government is, how much power he still has, whether they have communications with the military there. What is your assessment of this?
Yeah, well, I mean, Pezeshkian and actually the Iranian government delegated responsibility to individual IRGC commanders, depending on the regional kind of control or the regional groupings. So it could be that possibly the central government has lacked the ability to really control these regional commanders when it comes to operations, or it could just be kind of posturing for potentially some kind of diplomatic solution in the future. But it certainly does indicate that the Iranian government is not as cohesive as we perhaps have experienced in the past.
We've also seen, Israel launching massive strikes, quite, broad in terms of looking at Tehran assets as well as what they say in Isfahan, which of course is the site of, the nuclear program. We also know the wording from, the United States that they completely obliterated Iran's nuclear capabilities, but they're saying there's something underground that they need to target. So, my question comes, from various elements. How much has Iran's military been degraded and military capabilities, but also, whatever nuclear abilities they might have?
Yeah, I'll start with military capabilities because that's been the clearest kind of operational objective of this campaign. Thus far, U.S. and Israeli strikes have largely dealt with the ballistic missile issue. So that's targeting Iranian bases in Western Iran, where most of the missile cities that hosted medium-range ballistic missiles are hosted. But they also targeted missile production facilities and any kind of, basic conventional military facility in the primarily west and southwest of the country. So by most accounts, this has been relatively successful and will likely see more. On the nuclear program, there has been far less targets that have been distinctly related to nuclear. So whereas the 12-day war in June 2025 really did deal and focus on a lot of Iranian nuclear infrastructure and did indeed set the program back quite significantly, these current strikes have been less so concentrated on that. And that's partly because the current outstanding nuclear issues don't actually deal with, a military solution. A lot of this is highly enriched uranium underground in rubble, excavated with international oversight, or existing facilities that we don't necessarily know what's there. So the nuclear issue is a little bit more difficult to solve, and it's not necessarily solved by military campaigns alone.
All right, Nicole, we have to leave it there, but thank you so much for joining us today. Nicole Goreski in Paris for us. Now, Iran is warning other countries to not get involved in the war with the US and Israel. Iran's deputy foreign minister says if European countries join attacks against Iran, those countries will become legitimate targets for retaliation. He says Tehran warned other Gulf states before the war started that if the US attacks Iran, then Iran would target US bases and assets in the region. Meanwhile, French President Emmanuel Macron is emphasizing the need to contain the escalation in the region. We've got CNN's Bobby Nadeau in for us, and she joins us now with more on the European reaction to the war with Iran, and of course Iran saying that no one else should join in. So how are Europeans reacting to this?
Well, Europeans don't necessarily agree in the best of times. So this is obviously a very personal decision for each country. We've seen Italy, Greece, and France actually sending military assets towards the Middle East to protect Cyprus and Turkey. Now, we've seen Spain absolutely say no to the use of U.S. bases on their territory, and we've seen Germany really try to take more of a diplomatic stand on this. There are about 40 bases run by the U.S. across Europe. We've got some here in Italy and Sicily that are mainly command centers. The Italian government saying we're not at war, but yet they said, that they would consider if the United States made a request to use those bases for any sort of military action. That hasn't happened yet. Same thing in France. They said that they would, in fact, allow the U.S. or they would consider it if the request is made. The requests apparently, though, have not yet been made. But the Germans are trying to take a more diplomatic approach. Now, we have some of what the foreign minister of Germany had to say. Let's listen to that.
Iran's behavior is absolutely irresponsible, and we have clearly condemned it, including yesterday in a joint statement by the foreign ministers of the European Union and the Gulf Cooperation Council states. It is completely unjustified that Iran is attacking uninvolved states that did not participate in the attacks against Iran. This applies to the Gulf Cooperation Council states, to Cyprus, and to Turkey. It is irresponsible and likely to cause an escalation that must be avoided at all costs.
And Eleni, when listening to that, it really does, I think, underscore just how divided Europe is right now in their response and what they're, week into this, what the reaction, if any, should be. I think they're just trying to come up with a unified response, and hopefully, there will not be any sort of attacks on these U.S. bases here in Europe, Eleni.
All right, Bobby Nadeau, thank you so much for us in Rome. Now, the conflict in the Middle East is leading to a humanitarian crisis in Lebanon. People are fleeing to escape the spiraling violence as Israel and Hezbollah trade attacks. We go live to Beirut. That's up next.
Explore Africa with CNN, where 54 nations create the fabric of this rich continent. This is really complex. Discover business.
The biggest economic trends impacting the continent.
Nobody has ever done this in Africa.
Clearly, you're seeing something here.
Nature and culture.
I love music. My music, this is everything.
And the stories shaping Africa today.
Exported to markets around the world. The next 5 years, what excites you the most?
I think the digital economy is very, very exciting.
I had this compelling need to do something for my people, for my continent.
It's very, very important for us to tell our own story.
The energy is amazing. Feels so good to be here.
Why, particularly in Gaza, why is leadership failed here?
Selfish, short-term interest.
The allegations, I mean, this is chilling, stomach-churning stuff.
Yes, it is. What happens, Maria Corina Machado, what happens if you're arrested?
Well, we're taking one day at a time. Do you think that Colombia could be at risk here? What would it take, Mr. President, for Serbia to acknowledge Kosovo's independence? And it is here, on these grounds, St. Peter's Square, that his funeral will be held. This is what 18 months of war has done to the children of Gaza. Where do you find empathy with some of these autocrats?
The genocide in Rwanda made you almost quit photography. Tell us about that moment.
How does this story shape all of you on the future?
In a divided America,
where do I fit? You tell me, ask your
Abby Phillip brings all sides to the table.
Can you name one thing you'd do different?
The hypocrisy is so rank, folks at home. Classes in session.
To talk about the issues.
Congresswoman, it is false. The answer is zero.
The policies.
What is the Democratic Party about? Can you answer that question?
And the biggest debates to wrap up your day.
I hear what you're saying Trump believes in, but do you think it's a good idea?
News Night with Abby Phillip, Tuesday through Saturday on CNN.
The United States and Israel are now both conducting strikes against Iran.
Supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei is dead.
The cruise missiles that we're seeing here in Israel, unlike anything we have seen before.
Saudi Arabia has intercepted 2 drones.
There is the siren. We're going to head to the shelter.
Iranian drone flew directly over our head.
I actually spoke with the president this morning, one-on-one.
These are dramatic developments that are unfolding.
Welcome back. Now, it is about 11:40 a.m. on Saturday morning in Beirut, a city that's scarred by waves of Israeli strikes in recent days. These are live pictures coming through from Beirut that you're seeing on your screen right now. Much of its southern side is now off limits because of Israel's evacuation orders. And with no place to go, aid workers say many displaced residents are forced to sleep on the streets. Israel's far-reaching evacuation orders and strikes in Lebanon have displaced nearly 500,000 residents, and that is according to the Norwegian Refugee Council. Many residents are fleeing Lebanon and crossing into Syria. Lebanese state media reports that Israeli strikes have killed more than 200 people and wounded nearly 800. It targeted Iran-backed Hezbollah command centers with fresh strikes on Friday. The UN Refugee Agency is deploying teams to help people at the border crossing into Syria.
The strike was about 600 meters across. Someone was killed. We knew this was coming, and we prepared our suitcases a day before leaving without clothes. Our house is gone.
For more on this growing crisis in Lebanon, bring in Nadine Kafuri, the Health Program Manager for Relief International, and she's joining us now live from Beirut. Nadine, I mean, we're seeing some of these images coming through from Beirut. We also see the enormous traffic as well. I want you to first tell me how you're doing, how you are coping, and what you're seeing in Beirut right now.
Hi, Eleni, and thank you for having me. Well, what we are witnessing on the ground is a rapidly deteriorating situation, and hostilities in Lebanon continue to escalate with consecutive days of evacuation orders, airstrikes, and grounded clashes now. And as you said, more than 200 people have been killed and nearly 800 injured, and unfortunately those numbers are expected to rise. We are seeing massive displacement. Large numbers of families are fleeing northward to escape the violence. As of yesterday, more than 100,000 people were sheltered in public schools that have been turned into emergency collective shelters. These shelters were never designed to host entire communities, and most of them are already at full capacity. The situation is very critical, and the needs are very, very high.
I can imagine. I mean, we're seeing some of these images, and you're saying that, you know, schools are reaching full capacity and so forth. We're also hearing news of people having to sleep in the streets, you know, trying to find a way out. Give me a sense of how people are coping with this as Lebanon's health system is also being stretched.
Yeah, so as you are seeing, many families have to leave their houses, and they stay in the cars, like stuck in traffic for hours with small children, with elderly people, and they don't know if they're gonna get to a safe place anytime soon. And sometimes they arrive without finding any safe shelter to stay in, because, you know, public schools are already, most of them are at full capacity, and of course there are efforts to increase the number of shelters to host these people, but it's not really that quick. Families are arriving after fleeing their homes with almost nothing. Many arrived.
For you, I mean, you work at Relief International. I want you to give me an idea of, you know, the ability for NGOs to bring in the much needed supplies right